Normally I would blur my background, but I'm not sure how to do that right now.
That's all right. You're looking good. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another live stream event. Excited to have Dr. Joanna Fix with us today. We're going to talk about her story. Before we do that, usual disclaimer that we are not giving individual medical advice in this context, and that anything we talk about, if you're going to make any changes to your medical regimen, make sure that you talk to your medical practitioners, your medical professionals about that. If anyone might be interested in having me be your doctor, there are options for doing that. And you can go to ifixhearts.com/talk or send an email over to team@ifixhearts.com. So excited today to have Joanna Fix with us. Joanna's got an amazing story to share around healing and showing the power of metabolic health and healthy diet and lifestyle. Joanna, why don't you start by giving a little bit of your background to our audience and maybe talk about some of the health challenges that you were facing.
Okay, thank you. Well, my background is I was a college professor and worked for more than 15 years in that role, also as an administrator in the university. I specialized in cognitive assessment and psychological testing, which I get the irony with that. And 9 years ago, I was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease at the age of 48. That was quite a shock. And 9 years ago, I was told that I had 8 good years left. So feeling pretty positive at this point that I have not spontaneously combusted into thin air. So you might have to keep me from going off the rails. Prompt me a little bit. What else would you like to know? Other than I'm married to an amazing human and I have 2 amazing dogs.
Those are both great insights. So maybe talk about, so you specialize, you said, in cognitive testing. I'm assuming that Alzheimer's is something that you were pretty familiar with. Talk about what it was like to get diagnosed yourself with that. And again, at a very early age.
I actually was not that familiar with Alzheimer's. I am specialized in testing for law enforcement, worked closely with the sheriff's department. So I did both, cognitive testing for behavioral issues and for applicants, intelligence testing. So I knew the general description of dementia and Alzheimer's as, the general public knew, which is this is terminal, this happens with old age, you're basically, rendered to a wheelchair, maybe, never getting dressed, never really advocating or being able to communicate or have much of a life, which is why people talk so negatively about it still. Because, the past 100 years, it's been nothing but the tragedy narrative and the stigma and, there's no cure and all of this other stuff. So that did not get received very well when I received my diagnosis. I subsequently sought out numerous second opinions. When I got to my 9th neurologist, he said, I'm going to talk to you like I would any patient with a terminal disease, with cancer. I can't help you. Okay, we're done. What you do from here on out is totally up to you. Go get your affairs in order. And, I thought, okay, he gave me a little Post-it with some resources, literally a Post-it. And so I said, okay, I'm gonna start to research some of these. And I so where are the other people like me? Where are the other 40-year-olds with Alzheimer's? And even forget that, where are the other people my age with dementia? I couldn't find anything that was relevant or helpful. And I really tried. I mean, I like to research. I like getting in the weeds. I'm a detail person, and I was failing at finding something that was appropriate for me on how to move forward with this. Not how to die with it, because that's all the information I was given. This is how you die with this. Okay, how do I live with this? And I realized I need to create content as I go through this journey with my family and my community. And through that global outreach, both locally and globally, I have met pretty much the most amazing people on the planet, because most of my friends either have dementia or they work in the field or they have a family member. And there are literally hundreds of thousands of us under the age of 65 with young onset and early stage dementia, either Lewy body, frontotemporal degeneration, vascular disease, or Alzheimer's being the most popular. So we are out there, and we are pleased that professionals like you are giving us a voice.
Yeah. So maybe just tell us, like, what kind of symptoms were you experiencing at the time you got diagnosed?
Well, it took about 4.5 years after I was fired from my job until I actually got diagnosed. So those early symptoms were not memory. They were fatigue and executive functioning. And I can give you some examples of that. But it was to the point where that last semester at the university, I taught a full load, plus I was an administrator working under the provost. And then I had my side job working with law enforcement. And I loved it. And that last semester at the university, I would go to sleep in my clothing because I didn't have the cognitive reserves left in the morning to get myself dressed, to fix my breakfast, walk my dog. It was all I could do just to roll out of bed and drive to the university and function. And so that was very stressful, not knowing what was causing that. And I thought, I'll just, kind of limp this along as I can. I figured I may need to take the summer off because I usually was, offered courses through the summer. So I never took summers off. And I thought I'm burnt out. I need to take the summer off. And that summer I moved to Colorado to be near my family, thinking, that wouldn't hurt to have a little bit of familiar support. And I was having issues with really normal things like putting gas in the car, loading the dishwasher, processes, sequences, figuring out the steps that need to be done in a certain order to function, as a normal human and activities of daily living. And that last, it wasn't the last trip to work, but it was that last semester. I remember driving home from work and I stopped to get gas and, put my credit card in, started the pump, and all these people started, running over to me, screaming, stop. And I looked down and I had covered myself in gasoline. I had forgotten to turn around and put the nozzle into the car. I wasn't distracted. I wasn't on my phone because you can't be. I was doing nothing but totally focusing, and I had forgotten a really important step. That was 20 years ago. That was in 2000 and, this is 2025. So that was 2005 is how I have to think about it. So that was, an early major aha moment. And things like, just things that required sequencing, processing, navigating were things that I was failing at. And, when my supervisor said, you what is going on? You can't keep doing this because this was affecting my students. And we're going to have to have a departmental meeting if you want to continue working here. And I thought, I know what that means because I've been in that job and I've said that to employees, and I couldn't go back without having an answer for him. And I never went back.
So, like you said, 8 years ago or 9 years ago now, you see, 9 different neurologists. They all tell you the same thing, that basically there's nothing that you can do, and this is going to progress, and you're probably going to be dead in 8 years. And here we are 9 years later, and not only, like you said, are you not dead, but you seem to be doing pretty well. You can come on a live stream like this and have conversations. So what, I guess, what led you to the alternative approach that ultimately allowed you to prove them wrong?
Well, I'm all about proving people wrong. I never miss an opportunity to tell somebody, what they don't know in the effort to educate and be that teacher still, especially if it involves the dementia community. And my husband used to be a chiropractor, and he has been, he's had his head into nutrition and alternative therapies and approaches forever. And so when we met 10 years ago, he, we met, and I had told him at the time, something's wrong with me, but I hadn't had a diagnosis yet until the following year. And he thought, well, I bet I can help you out. And at that time, this still carnivore wasn't really something that people knew about. And ketogenics, the ketogenic diet was he was well versed, but he had said, we don't know what's going on, but let me try this, let me try that, and let's test you and see if you have ketones. And that was 10 years ago. And I did. I said, what does this mean? And he said, well, this means that your brain doesn't really need the glucose because it's happier if it can function with ketones. I may be using the wrong words here, so just forgive me. And I never ate a really poor diet. I just ate what I grew up learning was the food pyramid, what all of us did. And my mom actually majored in home economics, so back in the 60s. So, and she was, very good at making sure we had all the food groups and all of that. And then when I became an adult, I continued on with that, with a little bit of freedom to, make a lunch out of Hostess, pink snowballs once in a while if I was really busy. That worked too for a long time. And then when I got Alzheimer's, I looked up what the Alzheimer's diet was. And I thought, well, I'm already kind of doing that. Let me do it a little bit more. And, and I started feeling like I'm getting these symptoms they say you're going to get. I'm starting to have, issues with my incontinence. I'm having terrible insomnia. I'm having word finding issues. I'm having short-term memory issues. Honey, where are my keys? I can't find them. Well, they're in the freezer next to the ground beef and your cell phone. I mean, that's only funny like the first 30 times, and then it gets old. And he's been, Forrest, my husband, has been so great about not pushing me to change my diet because he was happy that I was producing ketones with what I was eating. And, fear is a powerful motivator, but pain is a more powerful motivator. And when I started this, feeling this pain in my foot, I'd broken my foot 2 years ago, but plantar fasciitis set in this year. For some reason, I had a whole year last year without it. And I did read your book. I bought your book, and I think you mentioned that in your book about plantar fasciitis. And then I was working out, and I couldn't make it through a 3-minute song without having to go to the bathroom. And it was, the list can go on, but I know we only have, 15 minutes left. But I can tell you that I finally, when the pain, I said, I don't want to live like this. That doesn't mean I'm suicidal. It means I don't want to be this way. And And so I was ready to say, okay, I've been eating pretty much ketogenic. I'm going to cut the carbs because Dr. Ovadia talks about this in his book. Let me see if he's right. And within 3 days, my plantar fasciitis went away. I returned the shoes that my podiatrist told me to buy to help because those didn't. The diet did. My incontinence, now I can predict, I can anticipate. I'm not having to go every 3 minutes. I can actually make it through a 2-hour car ride without pulling over. And I'm, it hasn't fixed everything, but I'm early on in this and I feel pretty good about where I'm going. And I do not miss the sugar. I don't miss the carbohydrates. I don't miss having a glass of wine, these ritual things that I just did because, nobody said I shouldn't. I mean, I was following the diet, I was doing what I was told to do, what was out there, and everything that was out there until, you came along and Dr. Berry and Chafee, and I'm trying to remember the names. And, I said, oh my gosh, do people know about them? And this is a game changer. If this can change the behavior issues and just the lifestyle, the quality of life that people living with dementia, either, who are still at home or in, memory care, if this can change, can you imagine? I mean, this is what people want. They want to maintain that relationship with their loved one. And I had real quick, and then tell me to stop talking. I had some unexpected, wonderful things also. In addition to the plantar fasciitis going away and the incontinence issues, I'm able to regulate my emotions better. And I'm waiting to hear my husband laugh at that because I don't know if I've ever been really able to regulate them, but it's been very poor the last several years with this disease. There's no, I can tell you back in January, there were still issues throwing things, breaking things, elopement, either by foot or in the car. And I have not had that. In months. And I don't want to, I'm talking about regulating my emotions, so I don't want to get emotional talking about it, but it's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, it's a very big deal. And it's amazing, in the chat, Cookie, who's joining us from Barbados, asked what causes Alzheimer's, or what caused your Alzheimer's, and how can one prevent it? And, I'll jump in a little bit, but then get your perspective. The cause of Alzheimer's and dementia in general is still very much debated, and it's a topic of scientific controversy because one of the main theories around it has recently been called into question. And that main theory around these abnormal proteins, basically, that start to accumulate in the brain was the main target of pharmaceutical approach to dealing with Alzheimer's, which has been disappointing, I guess I'll say, the results of that. And but more and more we are seeing that it definitely has a relationship with insulin resistance. And we know that, low carbohydrate, ketogenic, carnivore diets are a great way of dealing with insulin resistance. And, you have a great story, and I'm fortunate in that I know of others like you. We've had Hal Cranmer on our podcast. He runs memory facilities and has switched to ketogenic diets in his facilities, and he's seeing some amazing results with his residents. So, but what's your perspective as to what do you think caused and contributes to this? And I guess I would just ask you, why do you think you're now getting better when nothing else was working?
Because the foundation of what I was eating was carbohydrates. I now believe that I don't know if that caused it. I certainly know it didn't help. It didn't prevent it. And it didn't help once I was diagnosed to say, well, keep eating more of this, and throw in some broccoli and some strawberries while you're at it. And, for God's sake, stay away from red meat and butter and saturated fat. And I had an interesting, I'll give you kind of my ruminations on what I think contributed, although I do not know. Neither of my parents have dementia. Thank you, Jesus. It did skip them, but it does run in both sides of my family. But my dad was in Vietnam. He's a Marine, and he was exposed to Agent Orange. When he returned a year later, I was born. I have a, suspicion that may have been a contributing factor. My mom is from Los Alamos, New Mexico. I lived there. I believe that, that possible environmental exposure could have contributed. I was in a car accident where the person who rear-ended me died at the scene. I took a, bad fall down a ski slope, split my head open. They stapled me shut on the mountain. I think all of these things, perhaps this was my destiny anyway. And this just fast tracked it. Perhaps I was going to be 75, 80 years old and getting dementia at that point. And perhaps this fast tracked it. But I know unequivocally that this pyramid, this diet, whatever you want to call it, that's been pushing, this poison, because I believe it is poison, is contributing to pretty much everything that ails us. I mean, I've been very vocal about, treating people with dementia with pharmaceuticals, and that's a slippery slope, because there is a place for pharmaceuticals for some things sometimes. But and I had this experience this was a few days ago. I had horrible hiccups, and I've been going without carbs pretty much since you and I connected through email a few weeks back. And Forrest said, well, here, take a spoonful of honey, because that'll help, your hiccups. And that's pretty much all the sugar we've got in the house. And I took one and immediately had this pressure behind my eyes. And I've never had that before. And I think that I had just gotten so sensitive. And I said, this is terrible. What's happening? He said, you just got really sensitive to the sugar. I said, can you imagine in memory care, someone who's no longer verbal, getting, digesting something, whether it's a medication or, a pancake covered in syrup, and they have this pain or this side effect and they cannot communicate that? What fresh hell is that? And so they're left rendered being nonverbal, right? And so maybe they're throwing their plate because they're experiencing this pain and they're no longer able to communicate. And then what happens? Well, they get, deemed as, having a behavior. So now it's time to medicate them with antipsychotics. And I mean, you see the problem?
Yeah.
This is not just with medication. This is with the wrong food. And I mean, if that happened to me, and I can tell you, boy, this really hurts when I eat a spoonful of honey. What does that mean for people who can't tell you?
Yeah, very, very powerful stuff. Very true. And over and over again, right? People ask me, can I fix whatever their problem might be, right, with a dietary approach like a ketogenic diet or a carnivore diet? And, at some level, my answer is kind of always the same to them, that I don't know, but it's worth trying. And I'm very comfortable saying at this point that, low carb, carnivore, ketogenic diets do not harm people, and they're worth trying. And your story is an amazing example of that. And so glad that you found it. I guess my wrap-up question for you would be, have you been back to see maybe not the original neurologist, that diagnosed you, but other ones, and have they taken notice of how you've gone against the trends, I guess we'll say, gone against what it was expected.
A lot of those people I never wanted to see again. But I did reach out to one doctor who subsequently became the CEO of the hospital in Denver, and just, salt of the earth, wonderful person. And he said, it's amazing. I am totally open to learning from you. And I'm sorry that, I didn't have the answers at the time, something that could help you move forward in a positive way. But, and I said, Dr. So-and-so, I can't even remember his name. It feels different because we have a relationship. We're health partners. I'm not coming to you going, well, it's your job to know. I'm paying you. You're the provider. It's your job to know. Nobody knows everything, and nobody knows what they don't know until they don't know. And so it's my job as his patient to partner with him and anyone else I see, any other provider, and say, let's be curious and let's work on this together. Let me tell you what's not working. Aricept, a statin, Namenda. I can tell you what's not working, and let me tell you what's working. And you can't argue with the lived experience. If someone says it hurts when I take this, or I'm growing horns in the tail, if that's all you have as a provider to suggest, or all you're able to recommend, that's one thing. But you can't sit there and argue and say, well, no, you have to take this. No, the pain of having the wrong medication or the wrong diet, you need nutritional and relational support. And if someone is in pain or they are not faring well, that's evidence right there. How many clinical trials do you need? I am living proof that this is the most normal I have presented in a very long time. And, I really have you to thank for that.
Well, thank you for sharing your story. Cheryl commented in YouTube as well that thank you for the gift of sharing. For anyone that's coming across this, seeing this, that's looking for resources around how metabolic health and dementia and Alzheimer's can be related, I would point them, Dr. Dale Bredesen has a great book, The Alzheimer's Solution, I think it's called. Maybe it's called The Alzheimer's Fix. Dr. Mary Newport is another great resource for information around this. And, I encourage people, don't give up hope, whether it's Alzheimer's or something else that you've been dealing with that you've been told is hopeless. Diet and lifestyle are just amazing tools that don't get utilized, unfortunately, way nearly enough. So thank you for joining us, Joanna. Anyone, again, who's might be interested in working with a physician and a team that's focused on metabolic health, please reach out to us, ifixhearts.com/talk. And I thank everyone for taking some time out of their day to join us. Whatever channels you're watching on, please subscribe so you'll get notified. We've been doing live streams a couple of times a week, and love interacting with everyone, and hope everyone has a great rest of their day.